Good morning guys, we're back at it again in the mechanical room. So in the last video I showed how I did some of the copper plumbing on the inside and running that into the house, and in today's video what we're going to be doing is we are going to be going over some of the electrical conduits and running those into the house. So we're going to be transitioning from conduits to a big junction box inside the house, and that's where I'm going to be running all of my Romex and stuff. I personally hate the look of Romex, exposed Romex. It's nice when it's in the wall and buried in the wall. I've done enough rough-in for homes to know that I don't really like the look too much. But before we get started, if you want some awesome True Work gear, check out the link down below and you can use my coupon code HM15 to get 15% off some True Work gear off your entire order. Look at this flak jacket. Look at how cool that looks. You want to be cool? Got to get their flak jacket. Maybe the flak jacket will help you get the ladies just like the Brunt boots. Who knows? So I've already got our can prepped up and I got my 6 1-inch conduits, the connectors already tapped in there. So we are ready to go to start running some conduit through this room. One thing to note with this panel, this is not a residential panel. This is a commercial industrial panel. So you're not going to find this on the shelf at Home Depot. So I wanted a panel with no knockouts in it so that I could basically cut all my own holes into it. So this is a much more expensive panel because it's a bolt-on panel. It's designed for commercial industrial applications, but it fits in perfect with what we're doing in here.
Oh boy, does it ever. I love always listening to what I've recorded like weeks prior. It always gives me a little bit of layer. So I got the green laser set up there so I can measure basically how high the stub up distance is from the top of the panel to the bottom of that strut there. And it's just start bending our conduit and setting her up there. Now, if you're doing any amount of conduit work, I highly recommend that you buy a bender. So benders come in 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, and 1 inch, and you can even get hand benders in 1 1/4 inch. 1 1/4 is a pain in the ass to bend by hand, but you can do it. You can buy 90s at the store so that you don't need a bender. If you only need like a couple 90s, then I can see why you'd want to do that. But if you're going to be doing any amount of conduit work, watch a couple videos on YouTube about how to use a bender. And once you learn how to use it, you'll start to realize how easy it is to use, because a lot of it is just like addition and subtraction, and it's much more simple than you would actually think. So I'm cutting all these conduits to the exact same length. So I'm essentially starting back at 0 with a number of my measurements. And you got to get all those couplings to line up, because that's what the union guys do, and they get paid the big bucks. So you got to line up your couplings. Now, some of these pieces here, like this one, doing a saddle bend to that 90, it took me 3 tries to get that one exactly how I wanted it. So not every single time I bend am I perfect. Some of them end up in the trash. Unfortunately, with conduit, when you misbend it, the piece is typically trash. So you got to be very precise with your bending, because that's how you get fired pretty quickly, is if you have to keep throwing out a lot of conduit. Now this box underneath the electrical panel, that is connected to those two 1-inch conduits that are specific for low voltage. So I'll be able to pull network cables and anything like that up to the big garage, and then it'll be and then it'll run into the mechanical room through that one box there. These galvanized boxes, I got them on Grainger.com. You're not going to find a lot of this stuff in stores. These are more just kind of very specific items that you're going to find online. Now these two conduits that I'm running here to this other, I think that's a 15 or 18 by 24 inch galvanized box there. So I've got all my low voltage connections for network and for some coax cables that I'm running for the cell booster. They're being run directly into that box there. I just love this angle right here, having the 90s go one way on those one set of pipes and having them go the other way on the other set. Bending conduit is just simple math, addition and subtraction, and there's a few tips and tricks that you got to know, but you typically learn a lot of that stuff just through doing it. So the four main conduits that I'm running into the house here is coming to a junction box in the half bath. This box cannot be buried in the wall or anything like that. You always need access to it. That is a code. You're not allowed to bury boxes anywhere. You always got to have access to them. So we're running all of our four main 1-inch conduits coming into here. And I already told Hannah, I'm like, you got to find a painting or something like that to cover up this junction box, because you're going to see a gray box just, with a cover panel just sitting in the half bath. So you better get a painting that's going to cover everything. The standard gray color was not going to look too well on the exterior of the building with everything else being matte black. So we're painting we're painting up this sub panel to be matte black. Even though I buy it and it's painted, I still think it's a good idea just to use primer on it first, and then to put the finished paint on top of that. So right now I'm getting a piece of conduit fished through the wall there so I can hit it with the LB on the inside, and just getting this panel nice and securely mounted to the building here. Oh my God, you can see an electrical panel. Was this like an afterthought?
So let's check out what we got going on here. So the interior of the panel looks just pretty well like any other panel here. I've already got some things wired up. I've just got the outlets and the lights wired up inside of here for right now. But that's what the inside of the panel looks like. Easy peasy, guys. And now with this conduit work here, it looks complicated. And I'm just gonna tell you, it's actually a lot more simple than you would think. One important thing with doing conduit work like this, and you're running stacks and pipes that you want to follow the same lines and stuff, is to pick an on-center measurement for your conduit. So between the center of this guy and the center of this guy, it's 2.5 inches. So we keep that same on-center pipe distance. So this first bend, these are all the same bend, right? I've got a stub up distance, I think it was 18 inches, so I just bend these all at an 18-inch stub up. And then from here, to bend these next ones, I'm bending 190 this way. And then to bend the next one right here, I'm just adding 2.5 inches to basically the line that I hit this bend at, 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, until I get over to here. So the reason why I cut all these conduits so that they're the same, obviously so my couplings line up perfectly, but now I'm essentially starting back at 0. So I know that between this bend and this one, there's 2.5 inches between the bends so that they all start to line up perfectly. And that's kind of a very simple strategy for doing this. Bending some of those 45s and stuff, that's where they get tricky. And this is called a saddle bend. Getting this bend to line up center to these two conduits here and doing some of these other ones, that was kind of the trickiest bends, these ones right here. And then even these guys, bending it, the saddle bend in kind of a reverse direction to go behind the pipe, those are the trickiest ones. The 90s are easy, but hopefully that kind of gives you guys a little bit of an insight of how I did some of this kind of stuff. But I've got the one conduit going to here to pick up the dryer and to pick up the washing machine. And this one goes boom, outside and into the back of the exterior panel. So we've got our exterior panel, and one thing that you do not see, and that is not very common on homes, is having both an interior and an exterior panel. There's typically only one panel in a home, and it can be inside, it can be outside, but it's not very common to do two panels. And the reason why I wanted to do a sub panel in this direction or in this area right here is because at some point in the future, there's probably going to be a pool here. And there's going to be other things that are going to be happening outside of here that are going to require electricity. So instead of trying to figure out how I'm going to get wires and pipes into the mechanical room, into our main panel, it's much easier and simpler and cleaner and future-proofing this such that I know I just need to run conduits to the bottom of here. And this is just going to be a 100 amp sub panel, even though it's rated up to 125 amps. There's also other reasons why I'm only running a 100 amp circuit or a 100 amp circuit for this instead of 125. And that's because for a 100 amp circuit, I can fit all my wires into a 1-inch conduit. If I wanted to run a 125 amp circuit, I'd have to put it in 1.25 inch conduit. So I wanted everything to be 1 inch in there. So that's why it's only 100 amps. But that's it, guys. That's the major part of the electrical system here, all done and dusted. And just got to run our Romexes into the junction box inside, and we're good to go. All right, guys, so I hope that gave you some insight into what I kind of did in here. What I got set up right there, this is a cell phone booster. I'll go over kind of internet and that kind of stuff in another video, but I'll definitely be cleaning that up for sure. Don't worry, we'll get her done real nice. But with something like this, there was a lot of thought and there was a lot of planning that went into it. And there are some code violations in here as well. For example, you can't have a junction box like this just kind of floating in the air. It's got to be secured to something. But hey, I can do what I want. We're not being inspected. So there are certain codes that I follow because I'd say they are important. And then there's other codes that, they're important, but it's not going to create an unsafe condition in here or anything like that. And some final thoughts on what I did in here. While there was a lot of forethought and planning that went into this, at the end of the day, I'm still putting up one pipe at a time. And if you look at it and you're like, wow, How did you figure that all out? A lot of it was figured out because I'm just putting up one pipe at a time, as opposed to thinking, I gotta figure out how everything's gonna go before I've actually done anything. I've got an idea, but nothing is 100% concrete, because what you think about up here when you're doing construction, sometimes when you get into the real world, things are gonna be a little bit different. There's at least 2 or 3 code violations in this room. There's more inside the home that I'm totally familiar with and totally cool with. The point of this house is not to be 100% code compliant. In my opinion, there are very important codes that you want to follow, especially with an electrical system, conduit fill, derating wires, making sure you're not overloading circuits, running dedicated circuits to where they need to go. Stuff like that to me is very important. But some of these other codes, I don't really fully get them and understand them. So I don't really like to have to follow things I don't understand. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. We'll catch you on the next video. Talk to you soon. Peace.